Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another video, and this is the first of three parts where we'll be looking at Glenvale Transport, GTL in Liverpool. In this first bit I'm going to do a review of the EFE Leyland Titan model in GTL livery. Now I've already done the EFE Titan, but I did the more numerous dual door version of it, and this, as you can see, is a single door. There is a bit of a caveat to that which I'll show you when I take it out of the box. But if you want to see the other part, I will put a link in the description to this video, to that one, so you can see the review of the two-door Titan. So before we do anything else, I'll take it out of the box and then I'll quickly explain why I'm doing this as a three-part series on GTL. So as always, just remove the, open the cardboard end flap and remove the cardboard outer, take the plastic lid off and just tip it out, and there we are. So as I mentioned, the dual door version of the Titan was the much more common EFE model. There were 36 releases of that between July 2002 and March 2016. As I'm recording this video in July 2025, towards the end of July 2025, it's been announced that EFE Road, the Bachmann-owned successor to EFE, are going to do another 4 releases of the dual door version later on in 2025 or possibly early 2026. The single door version was much rarer. There were only 6 releases done between May 2007 and September of 2014. Now the caveat I was talking about is that the EFE model is a model of a bus that's been built as a dual door one and converted to single door. You can see it's got the little window here and the centre staircase that the dual door ones had. EFE never did do a model of the ones that were built with a single door, which had a front staircase and then the windows behind. So it is a model of a dual door bus, as I said, that's been converted to single door. I did the history of the Titan itself in the review of the other model, so again, if you want to watch that one, link in the description. So I'm not going to repeat it here. Now this is the first GTL model that I've reviewed, so normally I would do a history of GTL, and this is why I'm doing a 3-part series, because the history of GTL gets quite complicated quite quickly. I'll run through it very, very quickly in a minute. But in the second part of this series, what I'm going to do is I'll look at the history of GTL and what happened to them, but I'll also look at the question of why a lot of Leyland Titans appeared in the streets of Liverpool. Bus, who were the main operator in Liverpool in the 90s, and GTL, as I'll explain how they're linked in, but they had about 250 of them altogether that they'd bought directly from London, and about another 40 made their way into the fleets from other operators in the Liverpool area. In addition to that, around 20 other buses that operated for independents but never came into the Bus or GTL fleets. So about 300 of them altogether. So we'll have a quick look in part 2 at why all these Leyland Titans ended up in Liverpool. And as I say, we'll have a look at the history of GTL. The third part of the series, we'll be looking at some photos of GTL buses that I've got, and we'll talk through those. So that's the parts. As and when I've done them and they become live, I will put links in the description to this video to those as well if you want to watch them. So the model we're looking at is catalogue number 29201. It was released in May 2007. It was the first version of the single door bus that EFE did. And as we said, it's in the livery of Glenvale Transport, GTL of Liverpool. Fleet number 2628, registered NUW628Y, and named, as you can see, Steve. GTL named most of the buses, not quite all of them, but most of them, and 2628 was Steve. So, as we mentioned, in the 90s, the main operator in Liverpool was Bus. They'd been formed from Merseyside Passenger Transport Executive. They were required to do an arm's length company deregulation in 1986. In other words, a company that they owned all the shares of but operated like a private company. It was sold to its management in 1992. And it traded largely as Bus. There were other trading names, but the holding company was MTL Holdings, Merseyside Transport Limited. In 2000, MTL sold out to Arriva, but the Monopolies and Mergers Commission were not impressed. Arriva already had a large operation in the northwest of England, which brought the buses into and around Liverpool, and MTL had also operated the Merseyrail rail franchise in and around Liverpool, so it gave them quite a monopoly. So the MMC looked into it and said, look, you can't have this monopoly of trains and buses, you need to sell a depot, and they made them sell the large Gilmoss depot in North Liverpool. So that was sold off to a couple of entrepreneurs, and they formed Glenvale Transport, operating out of Gilmoss. Traded as GTL, the fleet name GTL, as you can see. as time went along, they bought a big independent called CMT buses, which let them expand, and then they sold out to Stagecoach. Again, we'll go through the full history in part 2 of this series. So the rail bus NUW 628Y was new to London Transport in November of 1982 as fleet number T628. The earlier Titans were built by Park Royal. The bodywork was built by Park Royal, but by the time T628 entered service, production had been moved to the former Leyland National Plant at Workington. So it was an all Leyland product. It had a Gardner engine. It was chassis type TN LXB 2RR, fitted with a Gardner 6 LXB. During its time at London Transport, it worked at Plumstead, Sidcup, Ashgrove, Chalk Farm and Brixton garages, before being used as a driver trainer from Thornton Heath Garage starting in October of 1993. However, in May 1994 it was stored and it was sold on later on that month to Mersey-Bus in Liverpool as fleet number 2628. Now Mersey-Bus bought a lot of Titans, as we just mentioned, but a lot of them they put through Edge Lane works. They had a big engineering works at Edge Lane, and they put a lot of them through there and converted them to single door. They were all dual door when they arrived from London. They didn't do all of them. They kept getting interrupted by other things that needed doing. So some of them went out onto the road still with 2 doors. Indeed, some went out in London livery, just with Mersey-Bus fleet names stuck to them, and operated like that for a year or two. Some of them were never converted to single door and just ran as dual door all the way through the Liverpool career. But a lot of them were, including 2628. This was one of the ones that went into Edge Lane to be converted to single door. And as you can see from the model, they did it by using a proper Leyland Titan panel, so you can't see the join. So as we said, Mersey-Bus was bought by Arriva in February of 2000. This bus kept its fleet number, became Arriva 2628. And then when Gilmore's Depot was sold off at the Monopolies and Mergers Commission behest, it was transferred to Glenvale in July of 2001 with Gilmore's Depot. GTL initially used the former Mersey-Bus livery, mainly cream but with a deep red skirt. However, in about 2003 they started to use the CMT livery of all over red, as you can see in this bus. And in 2004 this bus was painted into all over red. At that point it received its name Steve. It was sent to a couple of rallies in newly repainted condition, complete with bright silver wheels. Anybody who's familiar with GTL will know that the buses had a bit of a lived-in look about them, and sort of bright silver wheels like this were not typical by any means. But this bus was rallied a couple of times with wheels like that, and it was on. It was showing this route on its blind at the rallies. I've seen some pictures on the internet, so I'm guessing somebody from EFE went and photographed it at the time, and that's why it's got the blind display that it has. So Glenvale were bought by Stagecoach in July of 2005. This bus became fleet number 10628 under Stagecoach, on paper at least. I don't think I've seen any photos of them actually carrying their Stagecoach numbers. Possibly there was a little one by the fuel filler, but yeah, normally they just appear to be displaying the Glenvale fleet numbers, in this case 2628. It didn't last long with Stagecoach. They drafted in a large number of buses, some new, some second hand, to replace a lot of the GTL stock. And this bus was withdrawn in September of 2005 and sold to PVS of Carlton for scrap. So now we'll do the look around. Although I've done the Titan before, we'll do a full look round in case you didn't see that first bit. Let's just try and get some more light onto it and get the camera into daylight mode. That's a bit better. So, I mean, looking at it generally, it looks like what it's supposed to. It looks like a Leyland Titan. It captures the look of it quite well. In more detail, starting at the front dome, it's not too bad. It looks reasonable. It's a little bit chunky. It's a little bit chunkier than the real one was, but it does capture the look to some extent. The front window isn't bad. It should be 2 flat panes of glass in a V-shape. There is a slight curve to the window, but you can't really tell. It doesn't look too bad from normal viewing distances. As I keep saying on these reviews, I do these models a bit of a disservice by looking at them this close, because obviously normally you'd see it from normal viewing distance. And it does look like the actual window from an ordinary viewing distance. Destination plan printed on, so they can do different variations. So that's Route 17B to Broadway via Everton Valley and Great Homer Street. Very nice. When these buses first worked in Liverpool, they had a London style intermediate blind with like 4 lines of text and various different places on, which would take you a long time to read. As things progressed, they went to these, they normally had 3 lines, but some of them just had 2, like this one, that was a bit clearer to read for people, and the ultimate destination in capital letters there, as you can see. The windscreen, I think I noted this on the last review I did, and I've not watched it for a while, so bear with me if I didn't, but it somehow manages to capture the look of the real thing without actually being correct. The Titan had a barrel-shaped windscreen, and this is quite flat. It's not quite the right shape. However, somehow it manages to look like it's correct. It looks like the real thing, even though it isn't right. So yeah, happy days. The screen divider and the wipers are moulded on and picked out in black, which is nice. You've got the mirrors there. Not too fragile, but I still wouldn't hit them too hard. And I'll just try and get the camera to focus again. Apologies for that one. But yeah, these are slightly crushed in, as you can see, which they do tend to do on EFE ones, as they just sit in the box. It does tend to crush them in a little bit, but yeah, nice little detail. They look pretty reasonable. Although if you were driving it, you'd have to move that one round so it was actually round the side, not just in front of the pillar, wouldn't you? Lower front panel looks good. You've got the fleet number plate that they used at Merseybus for quite a long time. It's only printed on, it's not in relief. You wouldn't expect it to be in relief, would you? But it looks decent. Fleet number 2628, you've got a GTL fleet name there. The grille looking quite good. Headlights, indicators, side lights, moulded in relief to them, all looking really nice. And the name Steve. Registration plate printed on. This bus didn't have its fog lights on in Liverpool service, so the recesses are just painted over in body colour. It didn't actually have recesses in real life, they'd been filled in, but it looks decent and it looks like it should do. And I will just prove that point by finding you a photo of the real bus, and there you go. There she is on route 217 to Highton. But that's how the bus should look, and that is how it actually does. So as you can see, it's not a bad representation, and you can probably just about see what I mean about the windscreen. Although the one on the model is a different shape to the one on the rail bus, it somehow still manages to capture the look of it. So happy days. Going round to the near side, again, general impression is good. You've got the Titan feature of the very deep lower deck windows and the much shallower upper deck ones correctly done. The opening windows printed on again, so they can do variations because different operators had them in different places. But they look good, they don't really look printed. So, you know, they look like they've got some relief to them even though they haven't. And it all looks very nice. The door is nice, there's plenty of relief to that as well. Lettering, nicely done, the legal lettering there, the fleet name. GTL Glenvale Transport underneath. And these lovely bright silver wheels, which as they weren't typical of the GTL fleet by any means, but they look good. Level of detail on the wheels is very nice. They are very highly detailed, as you can see. Go around to the back, it looks very good again. You've got the heavy looking rear dome, which is the correct shape on this one, and the relatively small looking emergency exit. The handle to open the emergency exit is there. Moulded in, you can't really see it because it's done in body colour on this one. You could probably pick that out in a bit of silver just to make it look a bit better. Got a vent there which looks decent. There's a bit of the actual sort of vent housing itself is moulded on. It's in relief, but the vent, the bars of it are just printed on, so it's like a raised flat panel, if that makes any sense. Fleet name printed up there. The fleet number and the registration plate correctly in a bit of a recess, as it should be. Got the Titan feature of this window just over to one side. There should be some grills in there, and as you can see, if I put the light in, there aren't. I understand why. It's one of them things you don't really know it's missing. I mean, normally you view models from the front anyway. Even if you had it with its back out, you're not really looking into the cutaway, are you? The recess. If you were really bothered about it, you could probably put one in, just, you know, drizzle quite a bit of water in, get a grill and poke it in with a stick, just to, you know, lots of water to make sure it slides, and then dry it off and leave it. But it's one of them things you can't really tell it isn't there. If you're modelling it in a more in-service condition, these recesses did tend to get filthy on the rail buses because obviously bus washers couldn't get into them. So, you know, if you want to do a bit of weathering, that is the place to do it on a Titan. Hinges for the engine cover, modelled in, moulded on there. That looks really good. and you got the two-part engine cover. It lifted up and then it folded back over, so it wasn't sticking right over the fitter's head. Handle to open it, there's some relief to that as well. It looks nice. The lights, again, it's a raised panel, but the lights themselves are printed on. There's no relief between them, but they look good enough. They look decent, as does the back bumper. Round to the offside, again, pretty good. This vent is printed on, but it looks nice. The exhaust pipe is picked out in black, which is good to see. A lot of them, as I keep saying on these reviews, but they do them in body colour and they look ridiculous, but this looks really good in black. Emergency door, you've got the hinges, you've got the handle to open it, and the surround all cast into that. It looks really good. And yeah, very, very nice indeed. Fuel filler cast in. Vent there printed on. We talked about this window. Now, there were 4 variations in Merseyside. Basically, as we said, some of the buses were converted to single door, some returned the dual doors. And then, on top of that, on the offside, some buses returned this little window, both single door and dual door ones, and some buses had it panelled over. But again, both single door and dual door. As you can see, if I flip the photo back in, Steve had it panelled over, so the window was missing. The seat was still inside, but obviously because the seat faced sideways, you were facing out of the window on the other side, so you still had a bit of access to daylight. But yeah, had it panelled over. Now, you wouldn't expect EFE to panel that recess over on some of the releases and not on others, and they haven't. What they've done is put a window in, but they've just painted it in body colour. But it does have the kind of black rubber surround modelled on it as well, which makes it look a bit strange. But yeah, so it's good enough. Again, you wouldn't expect them to fill it in. If it bothers you, obviously you take the bus apart, you cut the glazing unit so the window isn't there anymore, and then you can fill in the recess nice and flat if you want to do so. But it looks alright from normal viewing. It was done like that so they could get a conventional T-side advert on it as well. I'm not quite sure why they didn't just do what they did in London and just take the sort of vertical bit and put it further back. But they didn't. They panelled it over so they could get normal adverts on it without having to mess about. So if we go on to the roof, very nice. Not much to say as there isn't on a modern roof, but you've got the panel lines cast in there, and you've got the cover dish for the radio antenna on there as well. All looking pretty decent. Flip it over to the chassis, you've got the normal level of EFE detail you'd expect, the chassis framework, you've got the fuel tank, the underside of the engine, bits of the transmission, things like that. And it all looks pretty decent. Go around to the interior, and this is where the model is very, very nice. They haven't just bunged the interior from the dual door bus in. Yes, it has the centre staircase, as it should do. But as you can see, they've put the extra seats in. There isn't the there aren't the bulkheads, and there isn't the sort of bit missing and the step down for the door. They have actually put the seats in fully, so it is a different lower deck interior to the EFE dual door model, which is very, very nice to see. And it's it's a great expense to go to, really, to just do 6 releases of it. But yeah, very, very nice. Only drawback, it's all modelled in brown. Now the seat backs on some of these buses were brown. On other ones they were done in grey. When Merseybus refurbished them, they did some of the seat backs in grey. However, some of the buses didn't receive that level of refurbishment. They just had the seats recovered. So the seats were generally a kind of reddish colour on the Liverpool buses. Some of the seat backs were brown, some were grey. You'd have to have a look at photos of the bus you're modelling to find out what's correct. But again, as always with these models, it would benefit from just taking it to pieces and putting some relief colours on, painting the floor in a different colour, grey or darker brown kind of thing. And as I say, doing the seats in red, picking out the backs of the seats in silver just to model the seat back grab rails. But all in all, it looks pretty good. There's some moulded detail in there. The handrails are moulded onto the back of the seats, and there's some shape into the seats as well. As I say, it's a lovely feature that they've put the extra seats in there, and there isn't the old doorway. So all in all, it is a very nice model. It's not the first one of these I've had. I've had quite a few, but I've ended up selling them off for various reasons. But I thought I would get one to keep. So how much will one of these set you back? Well, it's a tale of two halves. If you just want a generic Titan, like a 2-door one, I had a look on eBay. As I'm saying, doing this at the end of July 2025, and the cheapest one I could find was £16.99, including postage and packing. That was a Reading Buses 2-door one. I'm saying that was the cheapest one I could find. Having found it, I actually bought it, so it wasn't available about 2 minutes later. But hey, there we go. And the most expensive one I could find was £64.96, including postage and packing. That was a single door version, and it was in the Mersey bus livery, the old maroon and cream. The first ones that were refurbished and repainted were done in the maroon livery with cream window surrounds, before Mersey bus began to use a livery of mainly cream with just a deep red skirt. But anyway, yeah, so it's in that Mersey bus livery. They are sought after and they will cost you. The actual GTL one that we've got here, I paid £44.96, including postage and packing, for mine. That tells you what kind of price they are. As regular viewers will know, I don't pay more than I have to for models, and if I'm paying upwards of 40 quid, that's how much you've got to pay to get one. Again, I had a look on eBay. There were 3 available when I looked, and they were all about the same price. You know, 42 plus postage, 44 something, etc. So you're looking somewhere between £40 and £50 for one. That is the going rate for the GTL Glenvale Transport one. They are very sought after. As far as I know, it's the only Glenvale model that was ever produced by anybody, although they had various different types of bus that manufacturers have done. Nobody actually did a Glenvale model apart from EFE. This is the only one, and that's why they're quite sought after. So yeah, somewhere between £40 and £50 to get one. They all seem to be boxed, the ones that are available. They all seem to be in decent nick. But yeah, that's how much it will set you back. So that is it for this video. As I say, I'll do part 2, which will look at 2 things. Why the Leyland Titans turned up in Liverpool and the history of GTL in a bit more detail. And then part 3, we'll have a look at some bus photos of GTL buses from my collection. But for now, as always, thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.